Tattvartha Sutra. Now, how many of you have been coming here regularly? Most of you, okay? Raj, probably not. So it probably seems that in this sort of couple of weeks, there are a lot of concepts which have come across, and it might be quite confusing. That, we've discussed so many different things. What is reality? We have looked at some technical terms like dravya, paryay. We've looked at what is existence, what is truth, sat. And it all sort of seems very sort of, it might seem that a lot of concepts have come together in a very short period of time, very confusing, very muddling. So as Einstein told me, what he says, make everything as simple as possible, but not any simpler. So what I'm going to be doing is taking a little bit step back, and let's just try to summarize what has been discussed over the past couple of weeks. For that, I will need a volunteer. So, any volunteers? Jitubai, Nemish? Any volunteers?
Nemish, come on. Oh gosh.
So Nemish, so as we've seen, we've looked at existence. How many of you, do you remember any of these things? Dravya, paryay, existence?
No.
Nothing at all. Yeah? Okay, not too good. Not too bad. So now let's do this. You've been coming here to the SCVP school Fridays. But you go home on a Saturday and say, I'm super to discuss Kiruchi. It all sort of seems very muddling. So you decide to go to a park. Okay, Saturday night, nice park. And saying, okay, let me take some time out and let me start thinking about all these different issues which have been discussed over the past couple of weeks. So here we have Friday, he attends to the school regularly. Saturday he's going out for a walk, and he's now thinking about all these different concepts which we've been discussing here. Now, quite simplistically, he first says, okay, Aklabada Viksma, we've been coming together. What have I really gained out of this? What has been discussed? So when we say that, what are the two main substances which James talks about? He says, yeah, time and again, they always say Jeev and Ajeev. So that's absolutely fundamental. That what we've been discussing about, not even in chapter 5, but even in previous chapters, is Jeev and Ajeev. So that is absolutely clear. I mean, there must be no confusion about that. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's very true. So let's do this. So we've got, so this, let's imagine is Jeev. Right? So let's just get a table here. So one is Jeev. So let's imagine that this is a Canadian polar bear. It's got life in it, and this is Jeev. It's got so this is the Jeev. Ajeev is anything which is does not have a conscious. So this table is Ajeev. So that's very simple here. So now what we say is that this is very clear that we've now got two substances. Now in Ajeev, what are the different things? Any things you can name of Ajeev? Any other things which is Ajeev?
Table, the particles.
Okay, so that's, Pudgal. So the technical term is Pudgal or matter, which is Ajeev. Okay, that's very true. Anything else? Anyone who can help? Carl. Okay, so Carl. So here we got time. So time is here. So that's Carl. So that's again non-living, but it's a separate substance from matter. Okay. Space. So space, I mean, that is self-evident. There's space everywhere, so that's very clear. You can feel it. That you cannot exist without space. So that's fine. So dharma. Dharmastic. Okay. So now you can see there are two concepts which come along very frequently: dharmastikaya and adharmastikaya. But that's very confusing. What exactly is it? So as Nemish is walking along the trees, he says, these three things I understand very well, but actually concept dharmastika and adharmastika I don't really quite understand. So what he says is, I'm very tired, so under a tree, he sits down. So why don't you sit down here, Nemish? Yeah? Close your eyes, and now you're meditating under a tree. Now I've understood Jeev, and I've understood Ajeev. Within Ajeev, I've understood Pudgal, matter, I've understood Carl, I've understood space. But now they've been talking about these two concepts which sounds like dharmastikaya and adharmastikaya. So what exactly is it? Now, he's thinking about it and he says, I really can't understand what they talk in SCVP classes. They talk about all these matters. And he's just thinking about it. I just don't know. Dharmastikaya seems like religion. Is it religion? Dharma and adharma means non-religion. But he says, no, in the school they say, no, it's not that. So what exactly is dharmastika and adharmastikaya? So as he's thinking about it, he's sort of, and he's listening to the birds. You have to close your eyes, you're meditating. So you are listening to the birds chirping, you can probably hear a nearby stream, and he's sitting under a nice sort of tree which has got a lot of fruits in it. And suddenly what's going to happen, that whilst he's thinking about it,
It does hurt.
okay, so now he's realized something fell on his head. And now he thinks that, am I Newton now? That Newton discovered gravity, but now he's thinking that, and then he suddenly gets up and he just starts running around the fields and saying, Samajh gaya, samajh gaya. And then I asked Nemish, kya samajh gaya? And now then Nemish is now going to come up and say, now I've understood that how did this apple fall from the tree, that there must be some medium for it to fall. Otherwise, how did the apple, so what Newton discovered as gravity, now Nemish has discovered what dharmastikaya means. Dharmastikaya means that for the apple, it had ripened, no one forced the apple to come down. The apple ripened on itself, and it just so happened that Nemish was sitting under the tree, and the apple then actually fell on his head, and then he realized that for it to fall, there has to be some medium, and that medium has to be dharmastikaya. And as soon as the apple landed on the ground, he realized two truths in under just one instance. He says, why is the apple not moving anymore? Why is the apple just lying still? He says, it must be the opposite concept. It must be adharmastikaya. It is that medium which causes something to stop. It does not cause anything to move. So there are two separate substances, dharmastikaya and adharmastikaya, which then dharmastikaya makes something to move. It enables, it does not make anything to move, it enables. So it's your choice, or it's the choice of matter or nature. If something wants to move, that medium enables it to move. And adharmastikaya is that if either you as Jeev or a matter wants to be at rest, it gives you that, it enables you to be at rest. So is that clear? So that's perfectly, so whilst there are a lot of scientists right now who are actually thinking that dharmastikaya is a concept similar to gravity. So because gravity is a force, and as we know that in science, gravity could be different in different parts of the universe. But what gravity is doing, you can call it almost as very, very similar. You can almost, it's...
The combination of the medium and the force of gravity depends because, let's say in different planets, different medium is like that.
Right.
So the gravity is also different. The medium is also different. The effect of both combination is different of each substance or each.
Whilst I was doing my research here, there are some scientists who do believe that gravity is analogous to dharmastikaya. Whether it's exactly identically the same, that's open to question. I mean, because obviously when you look at the scriptures, they don't describe all the scientific calculations and mathematics, because we know W is equal to mg, and we know all those mathematical calculations, scientific. No, I'm trying to say that dharmastikaya is almost analogous to gravity itself. So because if you've got a ball here, and if the ball has to come down, what we know that this has got a mass, and W is equal to mg. So
then if it is just the gravity, then it doesn't have the effect of the air inside. Because without air, if something is falling,
right,
then the effect is different. The speed is different. Right? So it could be the combination of two things, which is...
Right, so what you're right. So basically we know from a scientific point of view that for something to move, if something is in vacuum, it might not move. It might just float around. But dharmastikaya is a medium which is pervading the entire cosmos, and it enables anything to move. So for something to move, either something which is conscious or something which is matter. For anything to move, you need to have dharmastikaya. Otherwise, you will actually, for example, dharmastikaya has to be continuous, and dharmastikaya itself does not move. So for example, imagine you were at a train station, and say for example dharmastikaya was in this whole cosmos, the dharmastikaya was moving itself. Then what's going to happen is you're under movement, and you still want to carry on moving, but dharmastikaya is moved, you'll actually then just be frozen. So dharmastikaya has to be in the entire universe, it's not moving itself, but the property of Dharmastika means that it's enabling something else to move.
And you couldn't call it the same as gravity, because if that was the case, then what is gravity on Earth would be similar to what is on the Moon.
Yeah.
Right, that's true.
It's all pervading,
Yeah.
similar.
So the only way I'm linking gravity to Dharmastika is that because of gravity, it's causing something to it's attracting and it's causing the motion to occur. So when you have two large bodies, so we know that if you've got sun and you've got the moon, because they are two huge bodies, there is some gravity and it's causing, so as you know the scientific, F is equal to m1 times m2 over d squared. So those two things are actually causing attraction to one another, two masses. And it's that attraction and something which is causing something to move is what I'm linking it to gravity.
Yeah, I mean, the gesture term would be enabler.
It's enabling, that's right.
And the idea of air is something that is it's the opposite. Air is actually very stopping. But then it be other the air part of it.
Well, resistance, you can call of air resistance. Yeah, so resistance, yeah, something which causes resistance.
Yeah.
So it's not air, but you can call it friction.
Yes.
So friction is more, so you can think of gravity as analogous to Dharmastikaya and friction as something which is causing stoppage. Because if something is moving, it's because of friction, as we call in science, that's going to cause something to hold back. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nemish? So, whilst Newton discovered gravity, we now had Nemish who discovered Dharmastika and Adharmastika. Well done, thank you. So there we go. So that was Newton who discovered that. But whilst the ball fell on Nemish's head, he actually discovered another truth besides Dharmastika and Adharmastika. And what's the other truth do you think Nemish could have discovered with this just ball? He just thinks about it, and he's discovered another fundamental Jain truth out of this. True, that's true. But now he's become very famous because now he's actually become like the Newton of the Jain.
Akash?
No. What he's discovered that what actually fell on his head was not actually an apple, but actually a black ball. And so whilst he had his eyes closed and he was in deep in meditation, something fell on his head. He picked it up. He said it's something round. So at first instance he thought it's actually an apple. And then he actually he looked at it, he says, no, apple is generally red in color, this is actually black in color. This is actually quite rubbery, apple seems. So what he discovered is that what you sometimes see could be, lage apple, that's mithyatva. And to recognize something as something else is mithyatva, but to recognize something as itself is samyaktva. Samyaktva means it's a right belief. So I've got the right faith in it. So that's another thing he discovered, that yes, what actually fell on me, so to call this an apple is actually wrong. To call an apple a rubber is actually wrong. But to call this rubbery ball a rubber and an apple is samyaktva, that's right faith. So that's another fundamental truth he discovered from this. Samyaktva versus mithyatva. And that's very, so mithyatva means it's like a discolored lens between us. What we see, so a lot of the spiritual leaders, they tell us, we are all very busy in our mundane life. We think by earning, by going to job, all these things is going to give us happiness. But from the people who are the monks and the nuns saying, you're actually running away from the truth. You are actually in the mithyatva. What you think is going to give you happiness is not actually giving you happiness. So that's the fundamental messages which many of these saints are coming to. Come on, wake up, look internally and saying that what is the real source of happiness? And it's not what you see externally, but something which is internal. So what we've now done in these few minutes is we've now looked at the 6 substances which we've been discussing over the past couple of weeks. We've now very well understood something which is Jeev, something which is Ajeev, and within Ajeev, which is non-living, there are 5 different substances within it. So in total, Jains believe that there are 6 substances in the entire universe. 6 and only 6 substances. Jeev and 5 Ajeev. And out of that Ajeev, it's matter, space, time, Dharmastika and Adharmastika, medium of motion and medium of rest. Now, the question which arises is that these 6 substances which you talk about, are they real or are they imaginary? So that's a very fundamental question which sort of comes along, that whatever the substances are, is it just a figment of imagination, or is it are the real entities? So now at Mahatma Gandhi, whenever any truths was presented to Mahatma Gandhi, he did experiments with the truth. He didn't want to take anything as gospel truth. So he wanted to do some experiments. So let's also do some experiments to see whether these fundamental truths we've been discussing, are they real or are they imaginary? So the first question is, are you real or not? You yourself. Why don't you do this? Why don't you, each of you, hug yourself? Everyone, please just hug yourself. Can you turn around? Yeah, fine. So on this basis, would you say, can you feel yourself? Do you think you're a real entity, or do you think you're imaginary? You're real. You can feel yourself, you can hear your heartbeat, so you feel you're real. Okay. So that's the first thing. So you know that you are a real entity. Now the next question is the person sitting next to you, is that a real person or an imaginary person? So either hug that person or handshake to that person, but and, did you get any response out of them?
Let me try.
Okay, so what you've established is that the person next to you, depending on your relation, love or hate, you would be getting an appropriate response. So the person next to you is a real entity, it's not an imaginary entity. Okay. The third thing is air. Now, is air real? Can you imagine that before the scientists came up with this O2, if you were 100, 400, 200, 300, 500 years ago, how do you imagine that if something is air real or not? So one experiment, what you can do is, can you just, again, if you just taking some breath in, just put your hands out and just blow out. It's a kind of a yoga asana. So if you just keep on breathing in and just breathing out, do you feel something? So this is again another important reality. I cannot see air, but I can feel air. So on that basis, you will tend to believe that that air perhaps exists. What its composition is, I don't know, but there's something which I can actually feel. So I can't see, but yet I can feel. So let's assume that air does exist. Now, how many of you have been to Singapore? Yeah. So, yeah, Rajeev. Have you seen the Wings of Time show? Okay. So let's look at this Wings of Time. I guess we left it the other way around. Okay, basically there's no sound, but essentially what you can imagine, just imagine that this there's background music going on. It's by the beach side, and what they have is they've got a few structures there. People are just sitting along the shore, and there's this show which is being put out. So you actually buy tickets and you can actually see this, and this is just by the seaside. And lots of people come and watch this. It's about a 25 to 30 minute show, and they've got these different lighting effects and, you know, some dragon flying through. Now, what do you think this is? How are they doing this? How are they doing this show? Sorry? In illusion. And any idea how they're doing this show? Projection. But projection on what? There's no screen. There's no screen there. Yeah. So right. So what they're doing is they only got those kind of the triangular structures, but beneath this, there's actually just fountains of water being spread across, and with the light going on it and the reflection of light, they're creating all these different effects occurring. So the question is, if you see a dragon, if you see the cogs moving, are they actually real or are they unreal?
They are not real, but they are not illusion even. It is the impact of sound plus effect of light and water combination.
That is true, but if you were a child and if you were to see a dragon there, or if you were to see that, what you see that, if you actually went there and physically, will you be able to touch that dragon, or will you be able to touch that the wind?
No.
No. So it is, you're seeing it exactly as a dragon, you're seeing a circle there, but are you actually, when you physically go there, will you see that there? I know, scientifically we know what it is, how they do it, obviously. But the question is, whilst air you cannot see, but you can feel, here you can actually see something, but you know, well, scientifically we know, but if you're a small baby, for you it's absolute magic. You just do not know how can you just actually do this. With a rational mind, we know, using scientific knowledge. But otherwise, this seems to be like a great magical show. That they've combined sound, they've combined all this illusory. So what is very important to realize that what I actually can see sometimes can actually not be real. So what are the results from this experiment? So as we said, as Mahatma Gandhi said, that when you're experimenting with the truth, you and me, we are visible and we are real. So that we have understood. So air is invisible but real. The wings of time is actually visible but not real. Dreams, for example, if you all close your eyes for a second, and in this moment of this, you're actually dreaming that you can actually fly. All of you can fly, like you've just seen this Wings of Time show, and now you're sleeping through, and you now actually feel that all of you can fly. Okay, open up your eyes. I ask, and you come and tell me, Rajeev, we can actually all fly. I ask you, can you demonstrate to me? Please fly now. And he says, sorry, I can't fly now. But he says, no, I definitely can fly. A few moments ago, I was actually flying. And what was that? A dream. So dream is something which is invisible, and the fact that you were actually flying is also not real. So you actually have these four combinations here. So between these four combinations here, we now need to know that when we talk of 6 realities here, we have now got the faith that space I can see, matter I can see, time we can perceive, we can feel how time is passing through. Space we have talked time. So it's mainly Jivastikaya. Soul is the main thing which we cannot see, and through a lot of scriptures and through a lot of reading through, we have to now believe. A classic experiment is that here I am, and we've seen through our relatives and our friends that at one moment a person is living, other moment the person is dead, and there's a difference between a living and a dead. So there has to be something, some element there, and through lots of discussions we know that what we Jains call is as Atma. So it's invisible but real. And so that's, we are sort of, either you need to believe in that it's something invisible but real, and same with Dharmastikaya and Adharmastikaya. We cannot see it, but we can feel the effects of it. And through the effects, we now believe that they are actually real entities. They are not imagination. That's not a figment of imagination. So I think that has to be quite clear. So if you look at the 6 realities, and in a way this has been recapping what we've been discussing over the past few weeks. And so we now start off where we left last week with Sandeep Bhai, Sutra 29. So, Sadravya Lakshana. And what this short aphorism is trying to say, existence is the defining characteristic of a substance. Dravya is substance, Sat is truth. So as we know that 6 generally greet each other as Sat Sri Akal. So Sat is actually true. And what does Sat Sri Akal mean? Sat means true, Kal means time, and Akal means no time. So truth is eternal. So that's generally what so Sat means truth, Dravya means substance, and Lakshan, the characteristics, this person's defining characteristics is like this. So the essence of a substance is existence. So for you to say that this has to be a substance because it's existing. For me, within me, there's an Atma, that has to be a substance. It has to exist. You cannot have something imaginary. If anything is very imaginary or illusionary, that cannot be a substance, whether it's matter or whether it's non-living. So that's a fundamental property of anything which is a substance. It has to exist. And as we can know, for example, if you've got fire, the essence of fire is heat or light, giving out light. So that's the inherent essence of a fire. If you've got diamonds, the inherent characteristic of a diamond is to shine. So the inherent characteristic of a substance is to exist. Okay, before we go to the next verse, can each one of you give an example of something that gets created, that gets destroyed, and that gets persist at the same time? So something which is created, something which gets destroyed, and something which is persisting, continues to exist. Any examples when you can give of any examples which these three properties there? Something gets created, something gets destroyed, and something persists.
Trees.
Gold.
Sorry?
Gold.
So gold.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's gold.
Necklace,
Yeah.
which and then you change it into maybe a bracelet.
Okay.
So persistence is the gold itself, stays
Yeah.
as gold.
Okay.
Then it arises as necklace,
Yeah.
and then you destroy it and make it into a bracelet.
Okay, that's a good example.
Um,
Water.
ice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was thinking water, ice, and gas.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. Any other examples?
Yeah.
Tree. So tree. How do you describe a tree? So.
Grows into a tree.
Huh?
Grows into a tree.
Yeah.
And then you cut it down, make it into furniture maybe, so you destroy it.
Yeah. Okay.
So it still persists.
Yeah. Still persists. Yeah.
Time.
Time.
So this particular moment is created just now, it has happened.
Yeah.
And now it's destroyed because it's
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
And then it still persists because we can talk about it.
Yeah. That's. Okay. I think that's great. So, if we look at something which I came up with, so waves. Waves. So get created. Waves get destroyed. But in that process, the ocean persists, carries on. Seasons. So you can have spring, summer, winter, autumn, all coming through. So there. And if you look at the definition, the difference between weather and climate is that a measure of time. Weather is what conditions of the atmosphere are over a short period of time, and climate is how the atmosphere behaves over a relatively long period of time. So that's again, as you can see, that you can have different seasons coming through, but weather keeps on persisting over a long period of time. The climate persists over a long period of time. Our own existence, soul is there, but then we can move into all these four different gatis. Heartbeat, even our own internal organs. Blood is flowing into the heart, blood is flowing out, and yet the organ of the heart is still pumping, it's still functioning. So you can't say that, blood in aibu, so it's got created, blood went out, it got destroyed, and well, the heart sort of, got destroyed. No, the heart is persisting, but through the process of inflow, outflow, and the heart. Same thing with the lungs. You're breathing in air, the air is going out, yet the function of the lungs will keep on carrying on. Look at your mobile phone. You get an email into your mobile phone, and then you say, I'm going to delete. Now, where is the email? The email is actually inside the phone. So if you went to a small child again and saying, I want to delete the email. So he says, where is the email? The email is inside the phone. So when you actually delete the email, are you actually deleting the phone? Are you destroying the phone? You get an email inbox. You're now going to be pressing the erase button, and you know that if you explain it to a child, the child might get confused. How is that possible? The email is inside the phone. I'm erasing or deleting the email, and the child might get quite confused. If you're deleting the email, that means you're deleting the phone also, because the email is inside the phone. But we know that it's an application within the phone, so the phone is persisting. The email came, the email got deleted, yet the phone kept on is existing.
Excuse me, Rajeev. Slight difference between this and that. When you talk of heart, the persistence thing is supposed to be one thing, and that is carried over
in origination as well as destruction. Like the example I gave you, gold.
Yeah.
મૂળ તત્વ જે ગોલ્ડ છે,
Yeah.
સોનું છે,
Yeah.
એ સોનાની ચેન્જ થાય છે.
Yeah.
શરૂઆતમાં આપણું નેકલેસ is again made of gold.
Yeah. Yeah.
That gets, the necklace gets destroyed,
Yeah.
stays but still remains as gold
Okay.
and changes into a bangle,
So this.
which is again
Yeah.
saying is a gold. Is a gold.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the persistent thing has to be the same all the time, which is gold in all the same place, whether it's utpan thai ke.
Yeah. So in this example, it's a relative example because what happens is that the blood is flowing in, the blood is flowing out, yet the heart remains as an organ. However, when we know that when the soul departs, that heart, no matter the blood comes in or blood goes out, the heart is not going to function anymore when we die. Right? But what is the heart? Heart is actually not then conscious. Heart is actually matter. Right? So that heart, even when the soul is departed, that function of heart is still going to remain as matter. The particles of matter is still going to remain there. So the persistence on a different level is still going to be there. I'm giving you a different example. I'm talking for an example where someone is living. Blood coming in, blood going out, and heart, the function of the heart is still carrying on. So that's just one example. But your question is that, is my heart going to persist through all time? Well, when I'm living, the heart is still there. But when I'm dead, then the heart is not functional. But the function of the heart, it's particles of matter. And those particles of matter will still be particles of matter. Will become ashes. But it will still remain as particles of matter. So it's a relative example. Whereas gold is a proper example because when something becomes a necklace or diamond, the gold is going to always remain a gold. It's not going to change at all. Yeah, the pot is another example. It's a broken pot. So pot is made out of earth. And then you can make different pots with it. But in that process, it's made out of earth. It's always going to remain as earth particles. Good times come and go. So looking at time, but memories last forever. Money comes money comes like a turtle and goes like a rabbit. So that's another example. Money comes, money goes, but we keep on existing. Paisa aiva, paisa gaya. It's all relative, as they say. So this is really the core of the chapter 5. Utpad, Vyay, Drovya, comes Sat. It's not describing any substance has got these three properties. Any substance, whether it's Jeev. So when we talk of any substance, we know that there are 6 substances. And all 6 substances have got the following characteristics. Origination, cessation, and persistence constitutes existence. So that's a fundamental...
Except the soul.
No, even the soul. Even, there is no exceptions to this.
The soul always has existed and can't be destroyed.
So it's modes, right? So this can become a very a tricky question. So for example, soul, right now, we know that the soul is here. Soul is permanent. Right now I've taken this existence here. In my previous birth I was something else. In my next birth I'll be something else. So right now, that's the creation. So right now my soul is in this mode here. In the next life and in the previous life was something else. So the soul is going to keep on existing. The tricky question becomes, you might ask a further question, how do you apply this principle to someone who is going to Sit-Shila? Because when you know that Bhagwan Mahavir or Adesha Bhagwan, when they've gone to Sit-Shila, they don't have any more rebirths now. So then how do you apply this principle in that instance? Because they don't have any more births. And I cannot give a definitive answer, but the way I thought of it, and others might be able to dispute it, but the way I understand it is that when you have to apply this principle for them, what it means is they've got infinite knowledge, right? So at any instance in time, what they can see that the modes coming in and out are not for themselves, but what's happening outside, because they've got knowledge of themselves and got knowledge of everything outside. But everything outside is appearing, is destroying, and persisting. And because that's changing through time, so therefore, what they perceive in their conscious is changing. Right now I'm seeing this. The next moment of time I'm seeing this, and before I saw this. So what's happening outside is what constitutes this. So you can still say that this has to be applicable. Because one thing is for sure, when they say that this rule is applicable to all substances. It has to be applicable to all substances without any exceptions. Otherwise, this rule cannot be true. You cannot say that it's only true for soul whilst we are in the mundane world, and it's not. It cannot be true when you achieve liberation.
Soul and time. In time did not originate. There's no start of creation of time. There's no destruction of time. There's changes. There's persistence.
Yeah.
It was never created, and it's not going to be destroyed.
Absolutely true. You're saying the same thing, but from a different perspective. So it's, for example, gold. The example gold given. Gold is always there. No, so gold. So you can mine from the earth, but gold is always there. So the element of gold is there, and so when we talk of creation and destruction, is of the modes, not of the substance. So time as a substance cannot be created or destroyed. Jeev as a substance cannot be created or destroyed, but the modes can be created or destroyed. So and that's fundamentally, when we'll come to the next slide, that's why there's substance and there's modes. And modes are called paryay, and substance is called dravya.
Right.
So and it's an interaction between both of them. Substances have got modes intertwined within them.
How would you explain Dharmastikaya in this case?
Yeah, so Dharmastikaya માં શું થાય કે so Dharmastikaya, the concept of Dharmastikaya is it enables motion to occur, right? Now,
So would you say different?
yeah, so if this is moving, is this now moving continuously all the time? No. So it moved and now it stopped because I made it to stop. So therefore there has been a change. So the function of Dharmastikaya on this did have an effect, but now it's not having an effect. So there has been a change in there. It's not having an effect all the time. And same with Dharmastikaya. Something is never going to be at rest for perpetuity. Things are going to start, stop. And so there are changes in their modes. As a function, they cannot be created, destroyed. But the modes, how we apply, those will come and go.
Also, these substances, we can never create them or destroy them.
Substances cannot be created or destroyed. That's a fundamental.
That's the
Yeah.
other side.
Yeah.
Change the modes.
Yeah.
It just changes the modes.
Yeah.
So all these are functions of time in that case, because at a certain point in time it's that, at a certain point in time it's something else. But basically it's the same.
Substance has got no relevance to time. A substance is always going to remain a substance.
Time is time.
The modes have got relevance to the time. The modes have got relevance to time. Yeah. Before, present, and after. Yeah. But substance will always remain a substance.
Yeah. Just one more thing is,
Yeah.
I mean, you don't talk about sound at all, waves of sound. Is there any way you incorporate any?
Very interesting question. There is a whole chapter on when you discuss Pudgal. Pudgal is the guy, so Pudgal is matter. And Jains describe sound as a form of matter. So what they say, and we also, science also concurs with that, they are vocal words. If I wanted to, we say the speed of sound. So all what it needs are molecules of the vocal cords which are actually moving across. So it's actually a form of matter.
So it's the light.
Huh?
Is that the light is described in the same way?
Light is also described. So Pudgal is also described shadow, luminous, brightness of the sun, moon no aklo, the ambience of the moon. All this is described as particles of matter. So Utpat, Vyay and Drovya, these three words are the essence of the entire Jain philosophy and the basis of the Jain agams. Let's see why. It's applicable to Jeev and Ajeev, which is all that in the universe. Now, it might be too small to read, so I'll try to read here. All the Ganadhars joined their palms and asked Bhagwan Mahavir, Prabhu, what is the fundamental entity in the universe? So these are all the 11 Ganadhars of Bhagwan Mahavir. Bhagwan Mahavir responds, Dravya is the fundamental entity. It is manifested in some forms, paryay. The form gets destroyed or changed. At the same time, it remains stable as a fundamental. And on the last one picture there, all the Ganadhars bowed their heads with reverence. Bhante, we have now acquired the knowledge of the fundamentals. What you say is the true. It is believed that Bhagwan Mahavir just gave them these three words. When all the 11 Ganadhars asked Bhagwan Mahavir, can you please describe me what is reality or what is truth? Bhagwan Mahavir just said these three words, Utpat, Voy and Drovya, And it is believed that on the basis of these three words only, the entire agams have been created. You can actually imagine how is this possible? Because if you now start thinking, it's all a question of contemplation. What gets created? What gets destroyed? And as your thought process carries on and on, it's almost like someone doing research right now. If anyone is doing a PhD in a certain subject, he's thinking about that project, and the deeper you think about it, you can start writing volumes and volumes and volumes and volumes of it. So it's really on the entire basis that of these three words that the agams are. So as the Ganadhars thought and contemplated on these three words, they really started writing all the different agams.
This is very similar to the Vaishnava concept of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva.
If you actually came 2 or 3 sessions before, I actually had a slide to show, and I exactly said the same thing, that this is such a fundamental property that we believe that the agams have been created on the basis of this. What the Hindus have done is actually taken this concept and personified them as gods. It's such a fundamental property. It's like almost like, you know, for us to believe it's like F is equal to ma or gravity is a most fundamental the concept that to that extent that the Hindus have personified them as gods, Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwar. God of creation, God of persistence, God of destruction. So whilst we don't believe in that, because we don't believe that there's some God there who is going to create, who is going to destroy, but for us, that same concept comes along across all substances. So it's absolutely fundamental. And it's such a fundamental substance that if you look at these three things, the Buddhist faith, so if you now look at there are two main concepts, something which is constant, permanent, and something which is changing. So Hindus have generally taken one part of it, called it Brahma. That Brahma is the only eternal truth. Everything else is illusionary. We all might be merging into Brahma. So fair enough, we can also believe in something similar. Siddha-shila is the ultimate truth. We're all hoping to get into Siddha-shila. So we all hope to merge into Siddha-shila. We'll not become one God. We'll all have our separate entities. We're all souls, but all going to be in Siddha-shila. So that's the one thing. Look at the Buddhists. The Buddhists have only focused on the change part. If you look at all the scriptures of the Buddhists, they only talk about change. There's change in weather, there's change in myself, there's change everywhere. So they only focus on change. And so most of the scriptures are only focused. And so that's why if you ask the Buddhist, they don't tend to believe in something which is called Atma, something permanent. So when they say, what happens when I die? Well, you go to Nirvana. What is Nirvana? Nirvana is Shunya, it's emptiness. So when I remove all my karmas, what's left? Nothing, empty. Because they don't believe in a concept as Atma. They just believe everything is in a state of flux, in a state of change. So the concept of change is fundamental to that. And what Jains have done is taken the change, taken the permanence, combine them into that. This is a fundamental entity of all substances, change and permanence. You cannot dissolve. Both of them are intertwined within each substance.
So both of them exist together.
Exist together. So Hindus have taken the main part, the permanence part of it, just in separation. The Buddhists have taken just the change part of it, and you know, in the past, many of the scholars of Buddhism and Hindus and Jains, they had a lot of debates, and these are the kind of debates they used to come up with, that, you know, if you talk of change, where is change occurring? There has to be something permanent. How can just change just disappear? What? It just disappear into thin air? So what the verse says is that all substances, so it's nice to know the technical term dravya. So dravya is substances are real, and real is called sat or sat as their existence. Because that we saw in verse 29, that the fundamental property of a substance is it has to exist. It cannot be illusionary. It cannot be a figment of imagination. It has to be something real, and it has to exist. But then the question is, what is existence? For anything to exist, you need to have these three properties: origination, destruction, and persistence. So as we have seen, existence is equal to origination plus destruction, which is the modes of the paryaya, plus persistence. So as we've seen, time exists, substance exists, gold exists, jeev exists, soul exists, but the modes could come and go. And what I was trying to explain to you is that, which is slightly more difficult to understand, is how can you explain this concept for Siddha-shila, the souls who are in Siddha-shila? Because there we know that they are in their soul, but they don't have any modes in terms of humans or devilish, because that's finished for them. So what are the modes for them? So the modes are what's happening outside, because they've got their own knowledge and the knowledge of outside. And that's what I believe what the modes should occur. So when you look at existence, let's see, this is a blue square, this is a yellow circle. So two separate entities, they're existing. So we can say that there is a yellow circle in a square box, or there is a square in a circle. Can you actually ever say that there is a square circle? You can say there is a circle in a square or a square in a circle, but can you ever say that there is a square circle? A square circle cannot exist. By definition, a square is a square, but you cannot show me a structure showing, this is a circle, how can this be a square? They're two exact opposite. So something which exists has to have this, but something which does not exist, that's imagination, that's just imaginary. So it's very important to realize that when we talk of certain substances, what is real and what's illusionary, what's hypothetical, or what's just, you can't have a square circle. So that square circle is non-existence. It just does not exist. Now what can be difficult to explain to the youngsters is, can you explain to me Devlok? Can you explain to me hellish regions? Well, we can't see it, we just have to go by faith. Because, how are we going to prove? But according to Jains, you cannot say that it's such that it cannot exist. Fundamentally, it's a different area. You can say that there is Devlok, there is hellish regions, there's Sichila. It all seems logical, it all sort of seems to fit in. It does not seem to be an illogical postulation. Okay, so Sutra 31, Tad Bhavyam Nityam. What remains as it is and does not pass away is eternal. So now they are talking about something which is a substance. What is a substance? Is what remains as it is and does not pass away. So that's a simple definition of a substance. So what we have learned is that existence has got a temporary component and an eternal component. Anything which exists, that has to have got an eternal component, and the modes which have got a temporary component. The above sutra defines what is eternal. So the examples which you gave, water. Water is eternal, it has got these different modes. So here we are talking about the water. Here we are talking about the golden jewelry. Here we are talking about the soul. The soul will keep on existing, it can have different modes. So something which does not pass away is eternal. Okay, I think I've got one more session next week. So we've got about 7 or 8 other verses to discuss next week. So I think it's a convenient stop. So if there's any questions, we can have any questions or answers. But otherwise, I think this will be a convenient stop to discuss the following verses next week. Nemish, any questions before you go away and go and walk in the gardens tomorrow?
Let you know next week. It's still a difficult concept of this, because if you think about it, the marrying the concept of what we consider as political, light, sound, all these things get destroyed.
Yeah.
Right, but there is no substance then. There's nothing eternal in the sound.
Oh, there is. Particles of matter. So what they say, you can have particles of matter. So even if I want to create a noise, it's one particle of matter I'm creating. So one particle of matter hitting against this and creating noise. It's particles of matter.
So it's those two are the reality. Sound is not existing anymore. Those two exist.
But there could be molecules of air here, which are then getting compressed and being hit here, which is then resulting in a sound coming out. These two could be the medium. So when you look at the Jain scriptures, this sound can be produced 2 ways. Sound can be produced by Jeev and Ajeev both, and sound could be natural or man created. So thunder. So again we know. So there are certain sounds which are natural sounds, and the other sounds which are created by mechanical so they've gone into great lengths to describe that how sound can be classified as. So sound is particles of matter colliding with one another, and the effect of that is sound.
The waves that you see are actually football. Sound waves.
Yeah, sound is particles of matter. So they could be in our voice box particles of matter which are then colliding, and we're doing it in such a way, processing in such a way that it's creating particular sound.
There was a discovery I saw it on, I don't know quite which channel, but basically they can put out the fire by playing the sound. So basically different frequency, and that the fire will go out.
I mean, sounds logical because sound is a form of energy. And how you utilize that energy, it's, I mean, we even use that sound as in terms of ultrasound and all these things. So it's just amazing to see that whilst you can have an X-ray, which is using images, light, you can also have ultrasound, which can give you a different picture. So, you know, how you tap into these different forms of energy is just...
But that just goes to show that there must be particles, and they, so like even the fire is of particles,
Yeah.
and by playing the sound, they can change the, if you like, the frequency or something,
Yeah.
and it goes out.
I mean, what you say, I mean, it's going to come in the following week. I'll just get into what you talk of is very similar. I mean, I'll discuss it in more detail next week, but all what it says, when you look at light, light is considered, has got a dual nature. Light can be considered as particles of matter, or particles of light, photons, or it could be considered as waves. And if you consider, so light has got a dual nature, and in that dual nature of light, can you imagine that if you've got photons of light here, so there's got a door which is open there, slightly ajar. If you all had to leave this room, we'll all have to go in a single, line by line. And so therefore the physics, the equations which are going to be applicable are going to be very different. Now if light is considered to be as waves, then it's got a whole different set of equations which come along. And what's very, very fascinating is that by considering light as particles of photons or as waves, you can actually have two different applications and using different equations but on the same entity, light. If I want to consider light as particles of light, you got lasers and so many other applications which are using that as particles of light. If I wanted to use light as waves, infrared and all these other kind of waves, I'm now using a different, they are still light, it's still the whole spectrum of light. But whether I use it as particles or whether I use it as waves, they're diametrically opposite, totally opposite entities. And yet, you know, different equations, but yet both of them are under work. And that leads to quantum physics, which is the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. It can be this, it can be that, or it can be both this and that. And it's just absolutely very, very fascinating how you can use this. But what you're saying is coming towards that you can now use as particles, you know, of sound. How can you use that to have an effect on light?
Yeah. Energy I mean, becoming in existence in origination. The concept of energy, maybe not in the persistence. The whole concept of energy.
I think if you look at science, there are, I mean, if you look at ask one of the kids who are doing their physics, or there are conservation of the principle of matter and energy. So matter cannot be created, cannot be destroyed, but can be transformed. Same with energy. Energy cannot be created, cannot be destroyed, but can be transformed. So those are the fundamental principles of science, and very much analogous to what we've said here. So I think, is that your question? That energy can be transformed from one form to the other, but you cannot create energy or you cannot destroy absolute energy.
Yeah, but energy also enables changing modes.
Yeah.
It's part of changing modes, energy.
That's right, because right now this is called potential energy. If I move, it becomes kinetic energy. So the energy has now changed, transformed from potential energy to kinetic energy. So the energy can transform. Here it's very different, potential, and the formula here would be mgh. How much energy does it have? The mass times the gravity times the height. And that's going to get into the kinetic energy, which is equal to half mv squared. The mass times the velocity squared. So there you have, you can transform, and those two energies are going to be identical.
Persistence
Yes.
is energy.
Yeah.
If you take the example of table, so the wood can sometimes be chair
into ashes.
Yeah.
So how can that same wood, which is now ash, turn into a chair?
So,
How can there be continuity?
right. So what happens is wood has come from earth, right? It's so there are again two different things. One is the body, and one is the soul. So behind the tree there is actually a soul, right? So if someone cuts the tree off, right, the soul of the tree has gone away, and that body of that tree is now a dead living entity. So that dead living entity, when you burn that wood has now become ash. And that ash can sometimes become fertilizer. So for example, it's now become, say, a fertilizer. And then if another seed has grown in, so that fertilizer is then now going to grow into another tree and into another body. So another soul can come in. So there has to be separation between soul and body. So when we talk of this came from a tree. That tree had a soul. The soul has now it's died in a way, and the body is now the body of the tree is now being used to make this. So the transformation does occur. So this, same with us. Whilst even we've got the same body, this is still particles of matter. So when we die, this is going to become ash. So sometimes the Hindus again believe in the same thing. What am I built up of? We are all built up of from earth, water, fire, air. All these elements get together, and that's what's making my human body. So that transformation of particles of matter is going to occur. So when I become ash, those particles of matter will assist to form another body for someone else. So those particles of matter will always remain there. The soul has just moved on. So to answer your question is that yes, the particles of this, when it gets burned, will then be used to form another body some other time. So the particles of matter will keep on existing. It's not in this form here, but it will be in another form.
Think of modern recycling, you recycle now in newspaper.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
You process it, you newspaper.
We'll also come next week. We'll discuss the most fundamental essence of this. There are two words which comes: transformation and transmutation. So transmutation means, can either soul become matter, or can matter become the soul? That's transmutation, and that can never happen. So a particle of matter will always remain a particle of matter, and that cannot become Jeev. Whereas a soul will always remain a soul. In fact, I was so perplexed that once I actually asked a question to Shramnijis from the Jain Philosophy, that this becomes such a difficult, that a sansar che chakal, janma, maran, wouldn't it have been easier if I was born as a stone? Someone would have kicked me, someone would have thrown me, nothing would have happened to me. I don't feel any pain, I would have had no question. It's a genuine question, that wouldn't my existence have been great if I was actually a stone? I could be a mountain, someone could be cut me down, make a house out of me, chop me down, no problems. You do whatever transformations I want. And the fundamental answer was that you are a soul, and as a soul, you cannot transform into a non-living entity. So matter will always remain as matter, and soul will always remain as a soul. For you to get out of this this whole mesh, you have to then go into Sitchila, which is where you get out of all this, but you cannot say, I want to become matter. A soul, a Jeev, can never become matter. I cannot become a stone. In the same way, a stone cannot say, I wish I'm as intelligible as him, I wish I can get knowledge, as much knowledge. He's got so much knowledge that he's building a house, he's building skyscrapers. I wish I can get all knowledge. So a stone, which is non-living entity, cannot become conscious. So transformation can occur, but transmutation cannot occur. So if I've got a substance, a Jeev, transformation can occur. I can become into an animal, I can become into a plant. So that transformation can occur, but not transmutation. I cannot go into a different substance. So what, in essence, simplistically, 6 substances, they all have got their independent existence. So time cannot, whatever the time is made up of, or the concept cannot become space, space cannot become time, Jeev cannot become a Jeev cannot become Jeev. They all have their independent existence. Transformations can occur, transmutation cannot occur between these 6 different substances. I mean, this is the last chapter which is talking about all these abstract notions. Then chapter 6 onwards is now talking about karma and all how it's affecting soul. So right now we are talking about everything generic, and then as you go along through the different chapters along, then it's now focusing more towards the soul, and how can the soul become purer, and all the main fundamental, the Tattvas and ashra, karma, and all these things comes later on. But this is really defining the entire background space, like what everything is, and then we'll hone in on Atma and all its interaction with matter. Because then when you look at the chapter following, all this in the background, we have got Jeev and you've got karma. And what is karma? According to Jains, and this is, I think, the only faith which says karma is actually particles of matter, it's Pudgal. And it's again a separate discussion when we talk about Pudgal. The question is, why can't I then detect karma? If karma is particles of matter, why can't I? Because if this is matter, why can't we? And in a nutshell, what Jains say that any Pudgal, so Pudgal is matter. And what does Pudgal mean? Pulan and Galan. Pulan means fusion and fission. So that is, 2 minutes. So the definition of Pudgal means that anything which is matter, which is anything which causes fusion and fission. And Jains say that any matter has got 4 fundamental properties: touch, taste, color, and smell. And out of that touch, they've got 4 pairs: hot, cold, viscous, dry, rough, viscous, wet, hot and cold, viscous and dry, hard and soft. So there are 4 different forms of property. Now, most of the matter which we see has got all of 8 of them. Karma does not have something which is called heavy and lightness. So karma, so what this means is when karma does not have that property of matter, so most of the particles of matter we see have got, it's known as 8 properties. They've got either hot, cold, so they've got the 4 combinations either way, hot, cold. But karma has only got 4, which means that heaviness and lightness is not there, therefore there is no mass associated with karma. So if there is no mass, there is nothing scientific which is going to be able to detect karma. Because fundamentally what you believe is it's particles of matter, but which does not have mass. And because it does not have mass, if you know that right now, if you look at what Einstein has said, that E is equal to mc squared. So particles of matter to go from the sun to here, there's a particular mass and it's the speed of light. But if something has got no mass, I can be one right now and I can be at the other end of the universe in 1 instant of time. The speed of light does not affect me. So karma could be here right now and it can go to the other part of the end of the universe in 1 instant of time. The physical laws are not applicable to karma. So that's how that's how Jains describe it's particles of matter, but with only 4 properties, not the full 8 properties. And so you believe in karma, but you also very well know that there is nothing ever, no matter how much progress science makes over the next hundreds or thousands of years, they will never be able to detect particles of karma. It's got no mass. So if something has got no mass, you just can't detect it. Jai Jai Indra.